everybody? Happy Thursday night football here. We got a little bit of a ball game here. Bengals Dolphins. Uh, got a couple people in the chat here. I didn't scare everybody away after last week. I like that. I like that a lot. Got Mac Attack ready to nerd out. That's what it's all about. I love it. I love it. I think we're gonna dive into. I'll start with checking out the Thursday night football challenge. I think so. What I'm gonna do here? Am I doing this right? Um, let me get the challenge up. Let's make sure I got all my ducks in a row here. We can take a little. Uh, we could do a little bit of a check on where we're at. If any of these rare bottlenecks are live, I don't know. We'll see. But challenge Thursday night football is not active yet. We're gonna call that upcoming, I think. So we are looking for the most passing. Hold on. That's right. Most passing yards. Okay, I thought it was completions for some reason. So passing yards, we got two at 88, Burrow at 70. Burrow's driving right now. So that one's gonna be a close one all the way to the end. Player with the most receiving yards right now, we got Tyreek Hill 29 and Hayden Hurst 25. So Hurst is a little sleeper, but I don't think that's gonna stick, right? There's looks like there's four guys all at 20. And then we got rushing yards. Mostert's got 9, but no moment. And then Mixon's got 37. So it looks like Mixon's kind of running away with that one. Tyler Boyd and P. Ryan are the two rare wild cards that everybody's hyped about. So we need a reception or a rushing attempt from those guys to get us going here. And it looks like if I am live now, which I think I am, Burrow, it looks like they got a little 4th and 1 here as we head into the second quarter. So yeah, we'll stay we'll stay tuned here. It looks like they didn't get the fourth there, so we're going back to the Dolphins. Rabbit says, "Do I buy a Dolphins or Bengals moan? Please help." I don't know, Rabbit. I think I'm sure both are in the 40s right now. Um, but if not, then I don't know. I think it's too early to tell. I don't know. I don't know if you take your bets just yet. The after especially after that 4th and 1, doesn't looks like Miami's going to get the ball back here. So we'll stop sharing that. I did notice that I got my pack landed. So we'll rip a pack just to kind of see if anybody's seeing if anybody's gonna keep showing up here. I might have scared everybody away, or maybe people just prefer watching this on replay. But we're going with it. We're gonna do it every week for those of you who care. Looks like 3-star. We got no rares, so that's okay. I already opened my 5-star and 4-star. 5-star, I got the Swift rare, which was sweet, and that's really the only moment of any. Oh, Rogers. We got a Rogers, baby. That's good stuff. This was actually, I think, the common that was the had the biggest chance of hitting. He had the most moments this week in the week 3 packs. So that's a nice little pass to Bobby Tanya in there. Series 1 moment. Always good to see the Series 1 moments. We're gonna be seeing those less and less now. Here we go. Curtis Samuel. This is a brand new moment. Just was minted actually yesterday, so this is his debut. Series 2 moment. And Samuel's been balling out this year. I think we're going to talk about him a little bit later, but he looks like he has some staying power here on this new look Commanders offense. Pretty sweet passer in week 1. And last but not least, AJ Green. Dusty AJ Green. Doesn't seem to be big on catching passes this year, but you know, maybe the Cardinals are coming up in prime time here, and he'll be live. So there we go. That's a pack, and that's a wrap on that. And we're kicking here. Look at that. We're over double digits people watching. That's good enough for me. We are gonna do. So I decided to stick up to the name of the show that I last week, spur of the moment, decided to call it, and calling it Power Hour. So for those of you who've maybe done a little bit of Power Hour in your time, We're gonna do it. We're gonna do Power Hour. We're gonna take a shot of beer between every game that we talk about tonight. So I got my Lambeau Field shot glass here. I'm going with the Michelob Ultras tonight. A little nice and light and flavorful. And we're gonna get this thing kicked off. Okay. So let's get zoomed in here. Get going here. I'm trying to get this done in a solid hour. Not spend as much time on some of these games that we don't care about too much. So for those of you who missed it last week or are going to be watching on replay, stuff like that. Basically, what we're going to do is we're going to go through every game. We're going to use the workload report, which is a big spreadsheet that I put together that looks at fantasy opportunity, fantasy production, fantasy results. Try to find maybe some guys who are going under the radar, maybe some guys who are trending good or bad against their weeks 1 and 2 results from week 3, and try to project that out for week 4. And then at the end, we'll take a quick cruise through any DraftKings type of projections or how things are looking. If there's any games that are really popping to us here as we get going. Um, so yeah, we're gonna get started here. As always, we're gonna start with the worst games first. Josh says the Power Hour always seems so harmless until you're about 45 minutes deep. Exactly, yeah, and you just can't get any more shots of beer down. But that's all right. So the first game on the slate is an ugly total. We've got the Giants. Sorry, the Bears at the Giants. Giants are actually favored by 3 at home, which makes sense. And the total's 39.5, so pretty gross here. I think the big story is Khalil Herbert this week. It doesn't. I think Montgomery is somewhat. I think he's questionable. I don't think he practiced today. I think he's for sure on the fence this week, and I think there's a good chance that he gets ruled out. So if that happens, you're firing up Khalil Herbert. He went bonkers in week 3 once Montgomery went down. 20 rushing attempts, 2 targets, and of course scored the 2 touchdowns and went over 30 fantasy points. So not much going on there. I would still feel fine starting Khalil Herbert, even if Montgomery plays in fantasy. Would probably stay away from him in DFS. And then the Bears, I mean, the Bears receiving core is just a disaster, right? So last week, let's count up these targets on the Bears side. I think we're not even going to hit double digits. Okay, we barely made it. 16 full targets on this team last week. Like, come on, that is just disgusting. You can't start Darnell Mooney. You can't really start any of these guys, in my opinion. I don't think it's worth spending too much time on it. It's Khalil Herbert or nothing this week. I think on the Giants side, on the Bears side, on the Giants side, Barkley. We got Barkley just absolutely dominating, looking like an RB1, like we were hoping for in the offseason when we were drafting him. Weeks 1 and 2 had an 84% snap rate. That carried right along in week 3, 92% of the snaps, 56% of the rushing share, 4 targets. Looked great out there on, is that Monday night now? Um, yeah, 81 rushing yards, 45 receiving yards, and a touchdown. Good enough, I think, for the RB2, maybe the RB3 of the week. Saquon just looks like a smash. And then man, the Giants receiving core is just a disaster. And so, what we're going to try to figure out here, we're going to look at David Sills, Richie James, God, uh, and Kenny Galladay, I guess. These are the 3 guys we're going to look at. So, Sterling Shepard, unfortunately, tore his MCL, ACL, something like that. He's out for the year. Tony hasn't really played much, and Robinson, they don't look like they're going to be healthy this week. So, there's a real chance that there's hardly anybody lining up out wide for the Giants, which is interesting, um, and maybe has some potential here. So, Galladay, I think, is the most dust out of all these guys. He only played 33% of the snaps last week. You see David Sills and Richie James are both ahead of him. Both of those guys received more targets, even though Sterling Shepard really led the team there. Darius Slayton is another name that should theoretically be playing, but like I don't know, man. I'm not too sure what's going on there, and why he hasn't really been playing. But maybe we see him this week. As far as air yards go, I guess Richie James is looking kind of the best out of this group. 41 air yards, um, and a decent conversion rate there. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Nothing's really jumping off the page there for these guys. So I think it's kind of maybe something's going to pop up in DFS. Let's kind of look at these guys. I mean, Richie James is projecting the best at 4,000, but he's going to be popular, and that just kind of feels pretty gross to me. I don't think you can play Galladay. He just seems like a dust ball. David Sills at the minimum 3,000 seems like a good play. Maybe somebody that's worth thinking about in cash, and then I mean, even Bellinger, Hudson, these guys, like, I just don't know what's going on there. I would be pretty scared of lining anybody up with Daniel Jones this week. On the Bears side, right now, Montgomery's projecting in, so Herbert isn't projecting too well at 5,700. But if Montgomery goes out, then Herbert's going to be a smash. And like we said, you could stay away from the Bears. So there we go. Made it through the first game. Shot number two incoming. All right. Game number two. We got my Packers. The Patriots are at the Packers. This is Packers are favored by 9.5 here. Remember, we're not going to have Mac Jones this week. So this could get to be a pretty ugly game. The over-under is 40.5. On the Packers side, I mean, Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon are still pretty much splitting the work evenly. Week three looked the exact same as weeks one and two for the most part. Really like seeing that they're both getting three or four targets, and converting those. Not a ton of receiving yards there, not a ton of rushing yards. It was kind of an ugly game against the Bucks. But yeah, I mean, didn't really get a lot of fantasy points from either of these guys, but we saw, previously, Aaron Jones almost 30% of the fantasy points and AJ Dillon almost 20% last week. They combined for 19%. So Bucks always typically have a pretty good run defense, so you expect that to kind of bounce back a little bit. Um, on the receiver side last week, it was the Romeo Dub show, right, for the Pack. And he played 89% of the snaps and saw 8 targets, led the team in targets, which was great to see. Christian Watson and Sammy Watkins are out. I'm not sure how long Watson's out. I know Watkins is going to be out for a while. Lazard did well also. Him and Dubs were the two guys that were mainly out there. So those would be the two guys that I would be looking to play this week if you're thinking about DFS. I'm not sure what's Watson's deal. I haven't seen the injury report to see if he's going to be back or not. But if he is, maybe that cuts into Dobbs a little bit. But I think for the most part, he's gaining Rodgers' trust there. And in week three, we got 73 yards for Dobbs, 57 for Cobb, 45 for Lazard. Cobb is doing it at an incredibly efficient pace. 10 receiving yards turned that into, or 10 air yards turned that into 57 receiving yards. So just the long run and catch there is really affecting that one. Dobbs as well, 25 air yards turned that into 73. So a little bit of smoke there, but the Whopper is what we want to look at for Lazard and Dubs, and they're both at 0.5, which is good. So I think Lazard and Dubs are pretty interesting options this week, especially against the Patriots defense that's been able to get passed on a little bit. Also want to talk about Big Bob Tanyan. He is looking like he's getting healthier every game, playing more snaps in week three than he did in weeks one and two, getting more of a target share than he did in weeks one and two. So I think Bob Tanyan is fine to get rolling here. For the Pats side, I mostly want to talk about the running backs here because Ramondre is really starting to seems like he's emerging as the lead back here. Each week he's been getting more and more snaps. This week it was a 60-40 split basically. They both had roughly the same amount of attempts, and Ramondre had a couple more targets than him. But the rushing yards went to Ramondre. He had more receiving yards as well, more catches. They both scored a touchdown. But yeah, this was Ramondre's biggest scoring effort of the year. Pretty big delta there from what he done for the first couple weeks. So encouraging to watch and see if that happens. If the pendulum keeps ticking towards Ramondre, I think it's worth loading him up in future weeks. On the on the receiver side, Jacoby Myers was out, so it was pretty much Parker and Aguilar that were on the field for a lot, and even Little Jordan Humphrey played more than Kendrick Bourne, which is kind of interesting to see. Parker had the big game, 156 yards catching off 212 air yards, pretty phenomenal there. But I think with Mac Jones being out and it's probably going to be Brian Hoyer. Like, I don't know, you just don't feel great about these guys. Let's see what the DraftKings projection. So on the DraftKings side, Jones and Dillon are both projecting really pretty well, actually. Actually, not super well for Jones. Dillon is projecting pretty well at 6,000. So if people are off of him after a slow week against Bucks, he could be pretty fun at 6K. I haven't really seen what he looks like against other people in his tier, but an interesting option for sure. And then Dubs at 4,500 is projecting really well, and Bob Tunyon, like we talked about, is projecting really well at 3,500. So I really like that. I could see a path to a couple, Rogers doubles this week. Maybe it could be an interesting play. Rogers is down to 6,300. That seems pretty cheap for him, and looking like he has a pretty good ceiling. Damian Harrison, Ramondre Stevenson, price basically the same. Pretty much have the same projection, a little bit higher ceiling for Stevenson. You're not sure I love it yet, but like I said, we'll keep our eyes on Ramondre, and then again, that we're projecting Jacoby Myers in. So all of these guys with Brian Hoyer thrown to them are just projecting like dust. So tough to really bring anything back there in the Packers. I don't know. It's gonna be a tough game to go there. All right, here we go. We're moving on to the next game. We're gonna line up the shot. This is shot number, I don't know, two or three. All right. Let's get caught up on the chat here. McAttack says, "What do you mean when a player is chalk?" I'm not hip. So chalk just means they're going to be like popular in DraftKings, right? So if a player's projecting well relative to their salary, then that means a lot of people are probably going to play them in lineups. And so when you're playing a cash game, which is like a double up or a head to head, and all you're trying to do is beat half the field and double up your money, you don't really care too much about if he's going to be played a lot or not, because you're just trying to beat half the field, just try to jam the best plays. When you're playing in a tournament, when there's a bunch of money up top at first and less as it goes down, then you want to be cognizant of ownership. You don't want to always just play the most popular guys because everybody's going to play the popular guys, and so it's going to be hard to like fight your way to the top. Um, that's maybe a whole nother lesson for another day, but that's just what chalk means is they're going to be popular. They're going to be played in a lot of lineups. Brent says, wonder what the spread would have been if Mac was playing. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, maybe 6.5 or something like that. I don't know if Mac's worth that much. Um, Sam said Tanyan. Yep, love it. Love Tanyan. Miami hits a field goal. Yep, did see that. So, Mike, I asked Zakarian before the game, who am I playing in showdown? Is it Bengals defense or Miami kicker? And he told me Bengals defense. So that's off to a great start. We got a little Jordan Hump. And then Mike said, yeah, probably playing the Packers as a one-off or like running back in Green Bay defense. I like that too. That's good. A little AJ Dillon Green Bay. I like that a lot. I like that a lot. I do like Dubs too. I do like figuring out Rodgers somehow. I feel like he's due for a decent game, and he keeps coming down to 6,300. But that might be my Packers bias sneaking in. All right, we're moving on. We have a great game here. New York Jets at the Pittsburgh Steelers. Jets are sorry, Steelers are favored by 3 and the over under is 41.5. So let's look at the running backs on the Jets. I think this is interesting. Ty Johnson didn't really play at all this week, one snap. So that's good. That's good if you're a Michael Carter and a Brees Hall fan. And meanwhile, Brees Hall just keeps ticking up in the snaps, right? So we see this quite often with rookie running backs where, oh man, sorry, the shots are getting to me already. All right, so we see this with rookie running backs where they start out slow, kind of until the coaching staff gets to them and they start to build some confidence. But we had about a 50-50 snap share. Brees Hall had 11 targets in week 3, and then pretty much a 50-50 attempt share there. Brees, turned 11 targets into 6 catches for 53 yards. They both had the same amount of rushing yards. So I think Brees Hall is kind of the guy you want to be hitching your wagon to now. Michael Carter maybe only popped there for the first couple weeks. And it seems like the coaching staff's getting a little bit more safe with Brees there. Moving into the receiver core, I mean, it's kind of been the Garrett Wilson show for the last couple weeks. He hasn't been on the field as much as Elijah Moore and Corey Davis, but he is getting way more targets, right? 11 targets for Wilson last week, 9 for Moore, 6 for Davis. When we were on the stream last week, we talked about Wilson and Moore probably being preferred to Davis, and that's kind of how it played out here in week 3. And yeah, just not a whole lot of touchdowns from these guys, right? The Jets kind of underwhelmed against the Bengals last week. Put up I think 12 points all through field goals. So not really what you love there, but um, a lot of air yards, 186 air yards for Elijah Moore, only turned those into 45 receiving yards. And then 100 air yards for Wilson, only turned those into 60, and then 69. Yeah, I mean these guys had a bunch of air yards. So when we see a lot of air yards and we see a low conversion rate, we want to check back into the what the conversion rate has been for these guys the trending conversion rate last couple weeks. So you can see all of them are in the 0.66 range, 0.68 range, which isn't great. It's not amazing, but it is better than what they did last week. So it's kind of a bet on the talent there, a bet on the opportunity. They are getting the opportunity there. They are getting the yards through the air. And they're probably gonna start converting those a little bit better. Um, Move it. Oh, so I did want to talk about Tyler Conklin too quickly. 62 snaps last week and 8 targets. I mean, that's just money for a guy who's in the weeks 1 through 2, he's got 95% of snaps. So I think Conklin's a fun guy to fire up there if you need a tight end streamer. He's on the field a bunch, and that's really all you need from a cheap tight end. Here's a Tua bomb. Oh, not incomplete. Okay, moving on to running back. So I'm getting a little bit nervous here with Najee Harris, mainly because Najee had most of his production last year based on pure volume. And this year, there were some games where Najee Harris had 100% of the snaps, 100% of the attempts. And the Steelers suck this year, which is you know, no secret there. But Jalen Warren is like getting in there enough to kind of be annoying. It seems like 12 snaps, 4 rushing attempts, 1 target, and so Najee just his ceiling is based off pure rushing volume, like Derrick Henry kind of. He's not going to be a big pass catcher. And so I don't know. I don't love that too much. He did have 3 catches this game for 9 yards. But I think that's maybe a little bit noisy. And a little bit would definitely want to see Warren getting less snaps if I was a Najee Harris guy. Looking at the receivers here, so George Pickens set the world on fire this time last week when we were watching the game together, with the catch that's sure to be on NFL All Day soon. So it's basically these 3 guys: Claypool, Johnson, and Pickens. They're on the field for over 75% of the snaps each. Johnson and Claypool pretty much out there for the whole time. Of course, like usual, Deontay Johnson is going to lead the team in targets. Typically, always going to be knocking on the door of double digits. Um, and so let's see what these guys converted through the air. You love to see the A dot here. All their A dots are in the 13 to 18 range. So that means average depth of target. And so that means, Trubisky's willing to air it out a little bit. But they're just not really turning them into many fantasy points or many real life points either. Um, and so you can see the air yards all look good on these guys. But again, the conversion rates are low, just like on the Jets guys. The conversion rates are low, which just means they don't have a very accurate quarterback. And their conversion rates are pretty low for the last couple weeks. So I wouldn't be really betting on anything crazy to happen here unless, maybe they decide to switch it up with Trubisky and go with Pickett or something like that. You do really love to see the Whopper here on Deontay Johnson. So weeks 1 and 2, that was a 0.75, which is pretty elite. Last week was a 0.79. So that just means he's getting a lot of the weighted opportunity in this offense, right? He's getting the air yards, he's getting the targets, he's getting the opportunities to score fantasy points. And if that stays consistent, then that's really a little telltale sign that we want to kind of keep firing up Deontay Johnson. And he performed well last week, 15.4 PPR points. Okay, cool. I think that's it. Let's see what's going on with this game on DraftKings. Brees Hall is priced above Michael Carter this week, projecting a little bit worse. So that could be a sneaky spot. I don't think a lot of people are going to play Brees Hall at 5,400. I think that's a pretty good number. And we just looked through kind of some of the trends there, and we see that he is trending upward, kind of, right. So I think that could be an interesting spot to play, maybe as a one-off. I just don't see this game stack being that great. And then Garrett Wilson, Elijah Moore, both not projecting super well. And that may be actually due to Zach Wilson being back and the projections just not really knowing how that's going to go. I feel like if Flacco is back, these guys would be projecting a little bit well. So that is a curveball to think about this week. Who knows exactly how Zach Wilson's going to use any of these guys? So the Jets could be just a stay away that everybody wants to this week, and I don't know. We'll see what happens. Deontay Johnson's looking popular at 6,000. We just talked about why. The weighted opportunity ratings there. He's getting a lot of ops. And so he's gonna be popular this week. Fryermuth looks good. Actually, a lot of the Steelers look good. So I don't know. It could be a spicy week here for some Steelers Jets play. Everybody's going to be scared of the Jets, trying to figure out what's going to go on with Wilson, and can probably load up some secondary stacks here with Steelers and Jets. I don't mind that at all. All right, here we go. Shot number 4. Well, Weisberg says, "What are we taking shots of?" This is Power Hour, baby. We're just doing beer shots, just keeping it simple. Yeah, what happened? We got 2 on the ground, huh? So a bad two a hit, and he took a bad one last week. Was this, did he knock his head again? Oh man. Oh geez, his fingers are like all, oh shit. Okay, that doesn't look great. I don't know if my thing paused or if they're pausing on that, but I think they need to move on from that one. Okay, that's a bummer. We don't love seeing that. Jeez. Okay. Hopefully he's fine. But it looks like they're bringing out the cart. Stabilizer. Oof. Okay. Always tough to watch that one go. Okay, we are on to game number 4. Uh, hope two is fine there. Game number 4, we've got Washington at Dallas. Dallas is favored by 3. Over under is 41.5. So starting on the Dallas side, I think eventually Zeke Elliott's going to go away, right? And it's going to be the Tony Pollard show. I don't know if it's going to be while Jerry Jones is still alive, but I mean, every time you watch Pollard run, you just wish he was getting all the carries. But they're splitting them pretty evenly. They have been most of the year. Pretty similar snap share. Neither of them are really getting any targets, which is kind of a bummer. That was a little bit of the noise that Pollard was going to get some more passing work this year, especially with their injuries to their pass catching core. But if Zeke doesn't score a touchdown last week, Pollard outscores him, and Zeke kind of just got that little dump off touchdown. So I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't feel great about starting Zeke. I wouldn't really feel great about starting Pollard either. But I would say Pollard has a little bit more explosive upside on a weekly basis. Okay, on the wide receiver side, it does sound like Gallup is going to be back this week. So I'm not sure. I think that it's going to take away a little bit from Noah Brown because I think they're both kind of the big outside receiver guys. But I don't really know if they even, it doesn't even really seem like they're throwing a third receiver out that often. So maybe they're doing a lot of 2 running back sets. I'm not too sure, but it's basically CeeDee Lamb, Noah Brown. CeeDee Lamb had the egregious drop on Monday night. Um, and but then backed it up with a pretty phenomenal touchdown catch. So he'll be fine. A lot of air yards, 130 air yards there. Um, Not a great conversion rate, and he hasn't had a great conversion rate this year. But he does have a really nice whopper there, 0.98. So that's good. Nick Brown is quietly having a pretty good couple weeks here with Cooper Rush behind the helm. 5 catches for 54 yards, um, and kind of just the only other option there for our guy Cooper Rush. It does sound like Dak Prescott is going to be back in maybe like the week 6 or 7 range, which is good. But man, they keep showing this Tua freaking replay, and it's kind of giving me the heebie-jeebies here. Okay, so I don't know if there's a whole lot to take away from here. Jalen Tolbert played a couple 36% of the snaps this week, and I don't know, he didn't really do a whole lot. And now with Gallup back, we'll see if that means anything. Dalton Schultz was out this week, and so Jake Ferguson and Peyton Hendershot kind of split the tight end duties there. Ferguson was on the field more. They both had equal amount of targets. Not too much to take away there. Washington. So we have J.D. McKissick and Antonio Gibson. A battle as old as time. 9 targets for McKissick as they were in comeback mode pretty much all the whole weekend on Sunday. So 12 attempts for Gibson, but 9 targets for McKissick. So I just think the McKissick role is just a little bit more lucrative here, and the one that you probably mostly want for fantasy purposes. Um, neither of them really scored too well because oh shoot, actually Gibson had a touchdown and only scored 11 points. So when I used to write an article about the workload report, that was one of the ones that I looked at is basically who got there just because of touchdowns this week, right? And whose fantasy scores propped up a little bit. Um, and I think that's what we're kind of seeing here with Gibson. So he didn't really score that much, right? It's just 11 points, but six of them are from that touchdown. So not a whole lot we can love there. Going to the receivers, Curtis Samuel, Terry McLaurin, and Jahan Dotson are the main three here, and it looks like that's gonna stick. Split the targets pretty well last week. Let's dive into some of the advanced stats for these guys to see if anything pops out. So Samuel's got the lower eight out of the crew, and he's also seeing less air yards, which makes a lot of sense. Those things are correlated. McLaurin and Dotson are both seeing a hefty amount of air yards here, and McLaurin was pretty in line with what he did the first couple weeks as far as converting those air yards to receiving yards. Actually hit the 100-yard marker, which is great. But then Dotson did not, right? 101 air yards and he only turned that into 10 yards, which isn't good at all. McLaurin did separate a little bit from the crew here in weighted opportunity rating, which is good to see. They were all pretty split evenly the first 2 weeks, and this week McLaurin separated a bit. And so with the 16.2 fantasy points, I mean that's a positive sign there. We want to see some bigger weeks out of Terry. So maybe that's in the future here. And then nothing really to talk about on the tight end side. I don't think anything's getting us too excited there. So let's see where we got DraftKings wise, right? So CD Lamb is projecting well at 6,700. The Dallas running backs are kind of canceling each other out. Gallup's at 5,100 first week back off an injury. I think that's a little bit steep. He's not projecting too well. But then Noah Brown also isn't either because he's at 4,900 and we just are not too sure exactly what his role is going to be. Cooper Rush at 5,300 is like kind of interesting. He's actually been playing pretty well, and he's projecting decently. And so I think Cooper Rush with CD Lamb and then like bringing back one of these Washington receivers is a fun little skinny game stack to talk through. Curtis Samuel's projecting the best out of the receivers at 5,700. And Carson Wentz isn't doing too well in projections, and neither are the running backs. So that's kind of fun. Curtis Samuel, Cooper Rush, and CD Lamb. $1,700, and you're moving on to some of the bigger boys with the rest of your lineup. Don't hate it. Okay, that's a wrap. We're on to game five already. I love the pace. We're 30 minutes in. I think by the time we're in game five last week, we were an hour in. So let's rip another shot here. Get this Michelob flowing. How's the chat doing? How are we doing here? 19 whole people are still watching me. I love it. Love it. Patrick says he's not going to last too long playing like this. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's really Tua's fault, right? He just oh, is so Weisberg's saying he held it too long. I didn't really watch the play, but yeah, I mean, getting your head smacked against the turf 2 weeks in a row is never really good. Weisberg said they're saying he might have a seizure. Jeez. Uh, crazy, 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 crazy. And then Patrick says Mike Zakarian's a big Noah Brown guy. Well, that's smart. Mike's a smart guy, so he knows what's up. Okay, here we go. Moving on to game number 5 of the week. We've got the Titans at the Colts. Colts are favored at home by 3.5, and the over/under is 43. So let's talk about Jonathan Taylor. We're going to scroll all the way to the right here. 12.1 PPR points. That's not really what you want if you drafted Jonathan Taylor first overall in your fantasy league, right? Well, let's look at the underlying usage, right? So he's getting 75% of the snaps pretty consistently, which is good. He actually saw 5 targets, which is pretty good as well. And he's getting 80% of the rushing attempts. So I don't know. I don't know if you really want anything more than that. Here goes T. Higgins for a long touchdown, huh? Walk-in touchdown. Love it. Love T. Higgins. That's a beauty. And then in weeks 1 and 2 for Taylor, he's got 93% of the rushing yards. I mean, let's see if Naheem Hines is really doing much here. He's playing on 45% of the snaps this week. They were in a little bit of a more competitive game with the Chiefs, right? So a little bit more in comeback mode there. He saw 6 targets, but he only saw 3 rushing attempts. So I don't know. I don't think he's a huge it's a huge deal there for Taylor, but I mean Taylor is going to get there on efficiency, right? He's going to get there on long runs, couple touchdowns a game, stuff like that. He's not going to be the PPR guy like McCaffrey, and so yeah, they need to keep feeding the keep feeding Taylor to see him kind of pay off that overall number 1 pick there. On the receiver side, our guy Paris Campbell is really the best sprinter in the league. I would say 58 snaps, 2 targets. I don't think it's worth even keeping him on a roster. It's just all smoke and mirrors that he's on the field for 82% snaps. Then you start going to Ashton Doolin a little bit more. Michael Pittman was back, 94% of snaps, saw 9 targets. Didn't really do a whole lot. Let's see if there's anything concerning with his air yards. Looks like we just didn't get air yards for that whole game for some reason. So I don't know why those aren't in the sheet. But Pittman still went off for 15 points, so that's decent. Um, Alec Pierce, I'd like to see him start getting some more snaps too. Doolin or Pierce, like any of these guys, get Paris Campbell out of there. He's just a wind sprinter. And then the tight ends are just a mess. Mo Alley Cox, Kylan Granson, Jelani Woods. Obviously, Woods had the huge like 2 touchdowns this week. So if you're on like a super deep dynasty best ball team, he probably crushed it for you. But other than that, I don't think it really matters too much, and I don't really think he's worth picking up on the waivers because they've got 3 tight ends and they all play a lot and they all get a couple targets a game, which is kind of brutal. Moving on to the Titans here. Derrick Henry had his first big week. I think he went over the 20-point mark, right? 25.3 PPR points in week 3, like that. Actually saw his attempts go up 74% compared to 64% in week 1 and 2. So that's positive. Snaps went up as well. And he saw 5 targets. Anytime Derrick Henry is getting 5 targets, that's money. That's money. Turn those into 5 catches for 58 yards. That's a thing of beauty right there. That's what you want if you're a Derrick Henry owner. It's probably not going to be very consistent. It's probably not going to happen very often, but when you can run into those, you like it, and you want to keep them in your lineup for that. Dontrell Hilliard was back this week after being out in week 2, and didn't really factor in too much. Played 14 snaps, saw 1 target, 2 rushes. So that's good for Henry. He had a big week 1, Hilliard did, and so a little bit nervous that he was going to cut into the Henry workload, and he didn't do that too much. Okay, let's talk about the wide receivers here because I think we still need to keep hammering home Treylon Burks here. 39 snaps, so 68% of the snaps, only 2 targets for Treylon Burks, which is a bummer. 9 targets for Robert Woods, 3 for Nick Westbrook Akina. Let's see if we can find anything with the numbers here on Burks, right? So the ADOT for these guys is all around the 12 range, so we like that. Only 24 air yards for Burks, nothing great there. 99 air yards for Woods, converted those pretty well. So yeah, I mean it was definitely a better Woods week. Saw most of the air yards, saw the big weighted opportunity rating here, and didn't have a ton of crazy fantasy points, but 12.5 is a decent output. So I don't know. I like the snaps from Burks, but I don't know what else we like from him yet. But I think it's gonna come. I think there's probably some more advanced stats out there. I've seen some people on the Twitter sphere that are still loving Burks. I forget exactly where he's popping. I thought we were going to be able to find it on these sheets, but we're not really finding it. So I don't know. We'll kind of move on from there. We'll see how this game looks on DraftKings. Jonathan Taylor 8,800. His price is still up there. He's going to project pretty well against the Titans. I'm not sure if people are going to pay up for him though. We'll see. He's projecting about 10% ownership now, which is decent. Michael Pittman's up at 7,200, and I don't know, man. I don't know if you trust Matt Ryan enough to pay off a $7,200 receiver. So he's not projecting too well. And then yeah, nothing on the Tennessee side is looking too great either. So this game kind of seems like a stay away. Maybe you're jamming Taylor in there if it seems like people aren't going to be playing expensive running backs this week. All right. Here we go. Eagle Putt says Tua is going to be shut down for a few weeks. I think that makes sense. And that's a bummer. Tua was off to a great start. The Dolphins were off to a great start. Really loved what McDaniels has going there. on the coaching side. So yeah, it's just a bummer to see. Uh, I am doing decent here in DraftKings tonight with T Higgins as my captain, so we like that. All right, another shot of Michelob down. Moving on to game number six. Game number six, we've got the Arizona Cardinals and the Panthers. I lost my sheet. Who's where? Arizona is at Carolina. This is an afternoon game. Carolina is actually favored by one at home, even though both these teams have pretty much sucked this year. And the over-under is 43 and a half. So James Conner was a little banged up coming into the week, and he only played 60% of the snaps in week three. His numbers here on weeks one and two are a little bit skewed just because he was out for the end of week two. So wouldn't buy a whole lot into that, but we want to see James Conner's numbers go up a little bit more. He did see 13 rush attempts to five for Eno Benjamin. So yeah, I mean, probably you're cautiously starting Connor maybe in the flex or something if you don't have any better wide receiver options. But this is something we want to track for another week, see if his snaps probably go up a little bit more here in week two. Um, and then on the receiver side, Greg Dortch, 81% of the snaps. So that's pretty big. Nobody else had over 40% besides Marquise Brown. But Marquise Brown, 17 targets. He's the show here. Actually, Dortch had 10 targets too. I mean, let's look at both of these guys. What do their numbers tell us? So in weeks one and two, Marquise Brown had a 38% air yard share. In week three, at a 39% air yard share. Amazing. Dortch didn't have the same, right? He's down to only 38 air yards. Converted those wells, had a long catch and run. But then, oh man, Marquise Brown with the perfect conversion rate of one and a weighted opportunity rating of 0.74, which is better than his weighted opportunity rating the first 2 weeks, and his conversion rate's better. I mean, we'll see. This is sometimes maybe a little bit of pause, right? If the conversion rate is extremely high one week compared to where they're trending. But I think it's safe to say it's a small enough sample size in weeks one and two that we won't say, hey, this is exactly how Marquise Brown's going to play this year. And so I think we take the big win. We take the big 28 fantasy points, and we say he's going to still be like this with Kyler every week. So there we go. He had took down 38% of his team's fantasy points. So that's great. Carolina side. So just as much concern as there is about Jonathan Taylor, there's the same for Christian McCaffrey. I did see some more reports this week that he now is dealing with the same quad injury that kind of bugged him a lot of last year. I don't know if it's the exact same quad or anything like that, but they were a little bit more concerned with the quad. So that's not great. We don't love that. And again, just like Taylor with 11 points, McCaffrey only had 13 points this week. So here we go. Let's dive in. Let's see if there's anything worried about. 82% of the snaps, we love it. 81% of the rushing attempts, we love it. 25 rushing attempts, amazing. Four targets, we want that to be higher. He's Christian friggin' McCaffrey Baker. Figure it out. Feed the man the rock. Um, as far as their rushing share goes, he broke 100 yards this week. Amazing. Only two catches for 7 yards. That's the part that's killing us on the Christian McCaffrey side. He's an explosive player. Just feed the man the rock. Okay, talking about explosive players that need the rock. DJ Moore got outscored by Laviska Shenault this week. And maybe Laviska Shenault has more points than DJ Moore has for the whole season. I haven't looked that up, but that's pretty sad if true. Um, So yeah, I mean, Laviska played 11 snaps, caught a big long touchdown. DJ Moore 100% of the snaps, six targets. Like, what are we doing here, Panthers? Who else are we throwing it to? We're throwing it to Ian Thomas, Tommy Trimble, She Smith, whatever. Like, get this man DJ Moore the rock. I don't even have any DJ Moore bags really, but he's just a dude. He's just a baller. We need to get him the ball more. Um, I don't know. That's all I'll say. The Panthers are disappointing. It's not even really worth looking at these numbers. They're kind of all gross. I don't feel confident starting anybody but McCaffrey in this offense. You'd like to think at some point they're going to turn it around, but I mean, come on. When is that going to be? They haven't even broken, I think, 60 plays in a game yet, which isn't great. So let's see how the scan projects, though. Arizona, Carolina. You think on paper, hey, maybe that's got some juice there. Marquise Brown is up to 6,900, and he's not projecting too well. I don't know. 6,900 feels decent for Marquise Brown, especially with where his conversion rate and his opportunity rate are trending. So I like him at 6,900, even though he's not popping in the projections. Kyler Murray at 7,600 doesn't look too great this week, and he's been kind of having to run his own show there on offense and making up for some of Cliff's ineptitude there. Christian McCaffrey 8,700. Not really projecting well, but sounds like he's going to be popular. So it seems like people are going more towards the popular running backs this week. I haven't fully looked at the whole slate yet, but it does seem like some of the expensive running backs are going to be popular this week, which is interesting. They weren't at all last week, and Derrick Henry went off, but that was about it. DJ Moore projecting really well across the board on my sheets here, 5,300. I'm telling you, we got to get this man the ball. So yeah, not a whole lot to love about this game. Not as gross as some of the others, but leaves you wanting more for sure. And this will be the last shot of this can here as we move on to game number 7. We've only got the we've only got 12 games this week since London stepped in and took one off the main slate from us. So halfway there, baby. 45 minutes in, we're on to a better pace than we were last week for sure. And look at that. We still got 15 people hanging. You guys are maniacs. I love it. I love it. I love it. I would be doing this if there was 2 people in the chat. So it's great. It's great to have everybody hanging out here. Feel free, guys, to. I know I talk fast. I blitz through all this stuff. I'm going over a ton of teams and a ton of guys. If you wanted me to look through a player, like if you want to say, "Hey, let's talk through this guy," if you want me to go through a team, if you want, got any questions you want for your fantasy teams, anything, fire those into the chat, and we'll take some time more in detail to go through them. Okay. Game 7 is LA Chargers at Houston. On the road, the Chargers are favored by 5, and the over/under is 45 here. Looks like we just had a little bit of a play here in the Dolphins game. I don't remember who number 14 is, but just got a deep, just got a little pass there. Teddy Two Gloves with the pitch to Chase Edmonds. Edmonds gets in the zone. There we go, right before halftime. All right, Teddy. Okay, Teddy. They're probably gonna go for 2 here. Try to tie things up. Okay. Houston, Damian Pierce versus Rex Burkhead. That's where we'll start. Snaps are going in Pierce's favor. The attempts are massively going in Pierce's favor. That's great for those who probably paid up for Pierce at the end of the offseason. So that's really good. 80 rushing yards, 2 catches, 21 yards, touchdowns. Beautiful. Definitely be starting Damian Pierce if you got him. I want to take some time on Brandon Cooks, and that's all we'll do on the Texans. But I think there's some underlying metrics here that want us to buy into Brandon Cooks. So 85% of snaps, he's out there a lot. 7 targets this last week. If you look at where he's at in air yard share, he's seen 36% of air yards, 204 air yards in weeks 1 and 2. This week he saw the same. He saw 28% for 67 air yards. And ADOT's 9.6, which is good. And his weighted opportunity rating is great as well, 0.54 this week, but it's trending at zero point 0.7, which is pretty elite. And he just had a really bad conversion rate this week. So he took those 67 air yards, which weren't a ton, and only turned those into 22 yards. But before that on the season, he'd been doing that at like a 67% rate instead of a 33% rate. So you think that's going to bounce back a little bit. And so I don't know. I think Brandon Cooks is a good guy to buy back into this week. We'll see how he's projecting on DraftKings, but I think the underlying metrics and usage are there, and the targets and air yards and stuff like that. And so I think he could be decent here. Although the Chargers defense is pretty good. Austin Eckler, again, he's just not getting a ton of snaps, which is interesting. He's been on the field for less than 60% of the snaps, pretty much the whole season. Did see 8 targets, which is great. We love to see that. And then 4 rushing attempts, uh, which is kind of weird. I guess the Chargers. I guess this is a weird Chargers game, right? They were down pretty big quickly, and I guess they left their injured quarterback in, but maybe they pulled Eckler out. So maybe there's some stuff worth throwing away there. We should get Keenan Allen back this week, so I don't want to dig too deeply into the receivers. But you can see here, Josh Palmer, Mike Williams, DeAndre Carter kind of ran away with things. Guyton looks like he's probably out for the year, so it's good that they're getting Allen back. But we know like Mike Williams, Keenan Allen are guys that are going to get banged up, so it's been kind of good to see the snap share really condense around these three: Palmer, Williams, and Carter. And now obviously Allen's back's going to spread that out a little bit, but I think that's really all we need to talk about there. Jared Alfred's been a dude. Um, 6 targets, 75% of the snaps, turned that into only 2 catches for 25 yards. Kind of a weird week for the Chargers with Herbert being hurt and then them falling behind big early. But I still really think Everett is going to be one of the better tight ends of the season. So seeing how this game projects on DraftKings, Damian Pierce is at 5,600 and he's projecting decent, not super well. Brandon Cooks, hey, there we go. We just talked about him. He's at 5,800 now. So unfortunately, he's going to be pretty popular this week. He's looking to be pretty chalky. Um, but we did like the underlying metrics. So he's got a shot there. Um, Austin Eckler looks great at 7,700, and he's carrying some ownership too. So it just seems like expensive running backs are getting some love this week. But yeah, he looks like a great option against the Texans defense, who's known to give up a lot of points. Mike Wills actually priced over Keenan Allen, which we don't see too often because of that. Keenan Allen's projecting a little bit better. And then Everett's projecting pretty well too, but he's 4,000, which isn't amazing. And then Palmer and Carter took a little bit of a hit there with Allen getting back, and their prices have not adjusted. So yeah, there's game number 7, and we'll pop open the second Michelob, grab another power hour shot, and move on to game 8. You know what? It's halftime. Let's check in. Let's check in how we're doing on Thursday Night Challenge. So we've got passing yards, which is probably pretty easily going to be Burrow now, right? I don't think Teddy has a moment. So load up on the Burrow there. We've got rushing yards, which uh, is still looking like Mixon. He's got 38. Burrow's got 8. Mostert's got 22. He doesn't have a moment though. So Chase Edmonds has 5. Tyreek Hill does have a carry, so his rare is live to be used as a wild card. And I'm checking out that it doesn't look like our guy P Ryan has a carry yet. So he's not live yet as a rare, which is interesting. As far as receiving yards go, we've got 69 for Higgins, nice. 62 for Hill, 39 for Waddle, and 25 for Hurst. So Higgins is running away with that a little bit, but I mean, with this game, anything could happen. I don't think the receiving yards are by any means locked up. And then Boyd, who was another popular pregame wild card speculation choice, does not have a catch yet. Neither does P Ryan either. So both of those rares are not looking great for people who speculated on those early. And then you'd have to think with Burrow out that Bengals are going to be the winning team here, but I guess time will tell here in the second half. Okay, moving on. Game number 8 is we got a little divisional matchup here. We've got Denver Broncos heading to Las Vegas. Vegas is favored at home by 2.5, and the over/under is 45.5. So for some reason, my guy Mike Boone did not show up on my workload report here. I think it's because he didn't score any fantasy points, and I only grab people who score fantasy points. But you can see here, 82% of the snaps went to Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon. So, that doesn't make sense. I feel like he should be on here. Whatever. We'll make sure Mike Boone gets on here this week. But I do know Mike Boone was on the field and was sniping some of the Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon action. So for the most part, these guys are in a little bit of a timeshare right now, pretty much splitting things 50-50 with the Mike Boone wrinkle, which who knows if that's here to stay, but it's definitely enough to be annoying. Melvin Gordon, of course, got the touchdown in that ugly like 11-10 Sunday night football game. was like, I mean, he scored 16 fantasy points. That was good enough for 31% of his team's share. Like, geez, that's pretty brutal. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like this is just the not as sexy version of like Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon, right? Like I just feel I would feel confident starting Jones and Dillon every week instead over Williams and Gordon, even though it's kind of a similar role there. I just don't love what the Broncos have been doing so far this year. Cortland Sutton is a name to be aware of. Um, he's just on the field every snap basically, even a little bit more than Jerry Judy. He was coming off an injury, so that might be part of it. 10 targets for Sutton, which is great. He had 11 catches in weeks 1 and 2, and added 8 more this week. I think he might be leading the league, or he's in like top 5 in the league of air yards. Had 254 coming into this week and added another 100. His weighted opportunity rating is great, 0.73 the last 2 weeks and 0.75 now, and he's converting all of his air yards extremely well also. So yeah, I mean, Cortland Sutton is kind of being that dude. And it's kind of fun to watch. I'm interested to see how Sutton's looking on DraftKings this week, because that seems like a pretty fun little play here with Vegas. Anything of note for Albert O? Just quickly scanning, doesn't seem like anything is popping to me here. Yeah, just not a whole lot to write home about Albert O, so that's kind of a bummer. People had some pretty high expectations for him coming into the year. Um, Chris Chris says the Bengals team moment is over 70. So that was a fun little thing to talk about in the Discord today. Is people are like, well, is the reason like the Cowboys ran so high is because it was Monday Night Football, and that's when everybody's got to make or break their decisions. But it sounds like Bengals are off to the races here. I did snag the Bengals rare this week for the rare challenge. I did think that the T Momo was the only one worth buying now. I think everything else is going to come down towards the end of the challenge, and that's going to be a pretty good challenge to complete. But I intentionally bought the Bengals rare. They have 3 primetime games the next 5 weeks, so glad I'm not having to sweat what's going on with the common because I went up for the rare there. So pretty happy with that one. Okay, Raiders. Sorry, we got a little sidetracked there. Raiders. Josh Jacobs was questionable coming into the week. Didn't travel with the team, had some sort of a stomach virus or something like that. But then he just came and pretty much dominated the backfield for the Raiders here. Brandon Bolden and Jacobs are the only 2 running backs to get snaps. 13 rushing attempts for Jacobs. Didn't really turn that into a whole lot. 66 rushing yards, but he did have 5 targets and 31 receiving yards, which is pretty decent. And scored about 20% of his team's fantasy points without a touchdown, which is pretty good for Josh Jacobs, to be honest with you. Pretty good, pretty good. It was the Mac Hollins show, though, in week 3 here. If you played Mac Collins in cash on DraftKings, you pretty much printed. And you look at this breakdown here with Hunter Renfrow out last week, 100% of the snaps for Adams, 99% of the snaps for Hollins. I mean, that's amazing. That is condensed production, which is what we love to see in fantasy, right? If we can find teams with condensed production, it's amazing, right? So 10 targets for Adams, 10 targets for Hollins. We did talk about Hollins a lot on the show last week, and then I went and donkeyed off and didn't play any of him at all on DraftKings this week. So yeah, it's one of those classic do as I say, not as I do things. But let's take a look at some of the metrics here for Hollins and Adams. So Adams has a pretty insane 258 air yards through 2 weeks, which is good for 45% of his team's share. But he's not converted those very well at a 59% conversion rate, which isn't great. But his weighted opportunity rate is a lead at 0.8. And so it's hard to say. Like Devontae Adams is typically a lot higher on the conversion rate, but he's played the last however many years with Aaron Rodgers, who's probably a lot more accurate quarterback than Carr. So it's hard to tell if that's going to regress to what he's usually used to. I mean, if he had 250 air yards with Aaron Rodgers, he is probably the wide receiver one overall right now. But because he's with Carr and hasn't been having the same action. He's not popping too much, but yeah, Matt Collins just really dominated last week. 137 air yards, 8 catches, a touchdown. I mean, he had a bigger opportunity rating than Adams did even, so that shows that he's commanding those targets, he's commanding those air yards. Um, and Adams got a touchdown as well, so he's still playing. He's still decent, but yeah, I mean, 40% of the team's points there for Matt Collins. That's great. Let's see how these guys were. Let's see how Mac was doing prior to Hunter Renfrow. Okay, so when Renfrow was there, he was playing 76% of the snaps, and Mac Hollins was still playing 90%. So if people are like, "Oh, it was just the Mac show because Renfrow was out," I think that's kind of fake news. So I feel fine playing Mac Hollins again. I mean, I don't know if you're starting him confidently in fantasy, but we're definitely looking there on DraftKings, I think. And then Darren Waller. Let's see if there's anything to be concerned about for Darren Waller. 70% of the snaps ticked up to 74. 19% of targets dropped down to 12%. Still got five, not great. Getting a lot of air yards, converting them well at 87%. Decent whopper there for a tight end. Didn't get as many of those air yards this week. Only had 3 catches for 22 receiving yards. Did not convert very well, so that'll probably pop back up. And so, yeah, I mean, I think Darren Waller's it's not too much to be concerned about here. I think he starts, if he gets back to what he did the first couple weeks, which it seems like that seemed to be sustainable, then I think he'll be just fine there. So popping over to DraftKings here, let's see if any of these guys are looking good. Um, Javante's looking all right at 6,600. Sutton is looking great, 6,400. And he's coming in that sweet spot of like 10% ownership, projecting really well. I'm thinking I like this a lot. And Josh Jacobs is chalk this week, which we always love to fade. So Devontae Adams with Cortland Sutton, that's fun. Maybe even like Hunter Renfrow if he's got no health concerns with Cortland Sutton. Go back to the well with Mac Hollins. Yeah, there's some fun ways to play around with Cortland Sutton here, especially if we're finding leverage off Josh Jacobs, a popular Josh Jacobs, so which we always are probably going to want to fade that. I just don't really trust Josh Jacobs. Okay, boom. That's a wrap on game number 8. On to game number 9. I see more people have tuned in as we're on halftime. So if you weren't loving the Richard Sherman commentary and you came over here for to dive deep into the data sheets, thanks for coming in. We're taking beer shots if anybody else is joining me. That's the point of the power hour, right? Where we're holding up to our name this week. And just like that, we're moving on to game number 9, which is a fun one, I think. I think a really fun one. Uh-oh. Who does Philly play? I think I screwed up my sheets here. Oh. The VLOOKUPs are failing me. Oh, it's because they play Jacksonville. Let me get this figured out. Let me get everything straightened out here. Just a quick, production, behind the scenes production here. Get into a sneak peek of the sheets. Okay. Philly Jacksonville. Let's see if I screwed that up on the other sheets. No, it didn't. Okay, cool. So we'll start here with Philly. I mean, Philly's just been lighting the world on fire, 3-0. Doing really well. Running back side of things, Miles Sanders. I mean, he's performing well. He didn't have a ton of fantasy points this last week, but I mean, like, I don't know. I'm just looking at these numbers. 59% of the snaps, 50% of the attempts, like 40% of the attempts last couple weeks. I think he's going to be kind of living and dying by the rushing touchdowns, which is a little bit scary, especially with Jalen Hurts running the ball as much as he does. So yeah, I mean, I don't know, but I think Miles Sanders, until further notice, with Gainwell and Scott getting enough carries, getting enough action, I think that's putting Sanders into the boom bust touchdown or nothing category, which is a little bit disheartening. But let's look at the pass catchers because that's where we're having fun here with with the Eagles. So it's Devontae Smith and AJ Brown who are the main dogs. Quez Watkins and Zach Pascal are pretty much just out there running routes and not doing a whole lot. Brown and Smith both saw double digit targets this week, and then Dallas Goedert only saw 4 targets. Which is kind of a bummer, but not if you're a Devontae Smith or AJ Brown guy. So let's look at all three of these guys over the last 3 weeks here. So AJ Brown was getting 50% of his team's air yards in week 1 and 2, and then the script flipped here in week 3, and Devontae Smith uh, took down 205 air yards. 205 air yards, good enough for 52% share. Need a little drink of water here. Got to wet the whistle. Okay. And these guys were doing it at an extremely efficient conversion rate, right? So Smith and Brown and Goddard were all just converting their air yards really effectively, all over one, which means some yards after the catch were factored in there. Um, and then this week they fell off a little bit, right? But I mean, when you get 205 air yards, it's hard to not fall off of a pace of one. And same for AJ Brown. You guys saw 130 this week. I mean, that's all good stuff. I mean, when you turn in 85 yards into 100 from 130 yards and 85 yards, I mean, there's nothing bad about that at all. Devontae Smith, of course, went off 8 catches, 169 yards, and that pretty sweet touchdown that I'm sure is going to be on NFL all day relatively soon. But yeah, all three of these guys caught a touchdown, which is great. In week 1, we saw the other side of this Eagles offense where all three of the running backs, I think, scored a touchdown. So yeah, I mean, I think the offense is more fun from a fantasy perspective when it's going through the air and Hurts is firing it off to these guys. But just be aware we've seen what happened in week 1 when it went all on the rushing side and these guys didn't really get there. Um, but yeah, I mean we're loving what we're seeing from Devontae and AJ Brown. And I think it's just a weird week for Goddard. He saw -1 air yards on his 4 targets, so just must have been kind of getting peppered behind the line of scrimmage a lot. So I'm not too worried about that. Okay, Jacksonville. So the other interesting running back to track, right? We talked about Brees Hall earlier, who seems to be on the incline here for the Jets. Let's see if Travis Etienne is doing anything similar, right? So no real change in the snaps. Still about a 60-40 split with Robinson and ETN. They both saw 3 targets, right? Remember, Brees Hall saw 11 for the Jets, which is kind of an underlying indicator for us that he's on the a way up. And about a 50-50 split here on the carries. So a little bit more carries went ETN's way this week than had in weeks 1 and 2, but James Robinson still led the team in carries. Still the team in rushing yards. Still got the touchdown. So yeah, I don't think we're as bought into ETN as we are a Brees Hall, based on the numbers here. Let's take a look at the Jones brothers here. We've got Marvin Jones, Zay Jones, and we even got Tim Jones, who played for 4 snaps last week. We're not really going to care too much about Tim Jones, but I do want to look at the 3 top receivers for the Jags because Zay Jones had a big week. Christian Kirk continues to be pretty. Oh, Teddy Bridgewater, I think just fired one into the abyss. Oh, looks like the Bengals guy was out of bounds though. That's why he's a defensive player, huh? So the snaps are pretty consistent with these three. The targets are pretty well spread out. Zay Jones led the team with 11 this week, 9 for Kirk, 7 for Marvin. And Lawrence is really airing it out to these guys, right? So all three of them had more than 100 air yards in weeks 1 and 2. And this week, 91 for Marvin, 57 for Kirk, and 45 for Zay. Zay just caught 10 balls, right? So Zay just caught 10 passes. His ADOT's lower, which isn't great. We don't like to see an 8 out of 4, right? We want to see that more in the we want to see that closer to 10, really. Most receivers we want to see an ADOT closer to 10. That's because when you have a low ADOT, that you're really reliant on volume, which is what Zay Jones got this week. He got a low ADOT and he got a lot of volume, which is why he produced well. But when he has a low ADOT and he doesn't get a lot of volume, and he only gets 4 catches or something, then you're really relying on yards after catch, which isn't as sticky of a stat as like an air yards is or downfield passing, right? You can't convert 4 yard passes into fantasy points as well as you convert 15-yard passes into fantasy points. So as we're talking there, I do like what we're kind of seeing from Marvin Jones here, but he's getting a lot of errors, but he's just not converting them very well. He's got 43% through weeks 1 and 2, and 36% this week. So it's just not really that great. They all three scored touchdowns against the Chargers, so kind of fun there. But yeah, well, let's see how they are. Let's see how they're looking in DraftKings this week, because I think this is a fun game to try to figure out, and I think it will be relatively popular, even though right now the early numbers aren't showing that. Remember last week when we were on the show, the early numbers weren't really showing a lot of ownership going to the Buffalo Miami game, which we know by the time kickoff happened, that's where all the action was. So Zay Jones is looking good at 4,200. People are probably going to chase that, but Marvin Jones is $100 more and coming in at a quarter of the ownership. So I think that's a pretty easy pivot there, and just hope that he runs hot on his air yards. Kirk at 6,600 is fine, looks fine. Robinson and ETN both don't look too well. And Trevor Lawrence isn't projecting great, but I think he's fun to kind of do some stacks with and some bringbacks on the Philly side. On the Philly side, it seems like people are priced pretty well here. AJ Brown 7,400, Devontae Smith 5,800, Dallas Goedert 5,400. So none of these guys are really popping off the sheet, but none of them are really showing up as bad plays either. And then Jalen Hurts is finally over this $8,000 barrier at 8,200. And of course, he's still projecting well because he's Jalen Hurts, and all the dude does is score fantasy points. So yeah, I think Trevor Lawrence is interesting. I want to figure out a way to attack this game. I think that's something that Mike and I will talk about on Sunday morning for sure. For those of you who have not watched Mike and I's show on Sunday mornings, we're gonna be doing it again this Sunday. We're gonna be talking through some DraftKings stuff, some injury news, stuff like that. At the beginning, we'll build a lineup for the red zone. We'll try to get the money this week. We're 0 for 3 to start the year, but it's a long season. That's how GPP life goes. Then we'll build some Rumble lineups. So talks through some Rumble decision points. I think tonight's game is probably going to leave us with some decisions. We'll also have the London game going off before Rumble. So remember, if you're setting your Rumble lineup, there's two games that you can see the results from before you set it. And when you think about the receivers in this game, right, we've got Waddle, Tyreek Hill, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Michael Thomas. I mean, there's a ton of receiving firepower that we're going to know about before the games kick off and the lineups get set. So there's a quick plug for our Sunday show. Make sure to tune in 8 a.m. Pacific time, 11 a.m. Eastern. I think Mike is going to be at a wedding, so I think he's going to be hosting it in a remote location, but we'll still run it. We'll have some fun there for sure. Okay, boom. Time for Power Hour. And we're on to game number 10. We've got the Cleveland Browns at the Atlanta Falcons. Doesn't really seem like it should be the third highest total of the week, right? But it is. Cleveland Browns are favored by 1 on the road. And Vegas is thinking this has a little bit of shootout potential over under 47 and a half. So Cordarrelle Patterson is just like the best 30-year-old running back on the planet. 17 rushing attempts, uh, just incredibly efficient. He's always an efficient guy. He only did on 60% of the snaps. Turned 17 rushing attempts into 141 rushing yards and a touchdown. The guy continues to defy how the running back position. Sorry, gotta get some of that going. And then we got Drake London and Kyle Pitts. These are the two guys that everybody's talking about, everybody cares about. Let's see what's going on here. Kyle Pitts finally 8 targets, turned that into 5 catches for 87 yards. So there's some double digit fantasy point outcomes for Kyle Pitts. Drake London caught a touchdown, second touchdown of the year, 3 catches for 54 yards, and did get that touchdown. I don't know why I'm not getting any air yards in this for this team either. So whatever game those it looks like Carolina Atlanta just didn't pop this week for me into the air yards model. I'm not sure why. Um, but yeah, I mean, yeah, so we can't really unfortunately dig into it too much there. That's fine. We'll move on. We'll check out these guys next week. Cleveland, Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt are actually both performing really well this year. Kareem Hunt seems to have a nice little relationship there with Jacoby Brissett. Nick Chubb obviously did get the touchdown this week, but 60-40% slip. Oh, geez. 60-40% snap share split, 60-30% rushing share split. So Kareem Hunt's just, as usual, doing enough to kind of be annoying there for Nick Chubb owners. 113 yards for Chubb, 47 for Hunt, three catches for 14 yards for Hunt this week, no catches for Nick Chubb, but Chubb did get the touchdown. So I like Chubb. I think he's running like a man possessed this year. He looks like a great rusher, but Hunt is just enough to really keep Chubb out of the elite tier there. I don't think there's really too much to talk about on the wide receiver side. Obviously, Njoku and Cooper had the big weeks when we were watching last week. Njoku was the challenge need there with 9 catches for 89 yards. Both him and Amari scored a touchdown. Both of them did great. So I think Njoku was one of my favorite tight ends to start the season. I had a lot of him in best ball. So it's good to see him to having a big game. And then Amari Cooper, is looking pretty good. He kind of got slept on all offseason, but he's looking pretty well so far to start the year. So we like Cooper there, and he's just kind of a guy that's going to take, I think, a couple big performances before we get some steam on him. And so I think if this is a week where we can get behind that a little bit, and Mariota's projecting as the best quarterback of the week, which never is really something you want to hear. Um, so I'm sure he's going to be a cash consideration play, but I would seem like he'd be a pretty easy fade in GPPs. And a nice way to fade that is just to go $300, or sorry, $100 lower to Jacoby Brissett, um, who probably has a pretty similar range of outcomes than Mariota, especially if the Browns get do better here than the Falcons do. So yeah, I think Brissett's a nice little pivot off Mariota if you're still trying to stay on this game. London's looking good at 6,100, and so is Pitts at 5,000. Patterson's not looking great because his price keeps creeping up a little bit, 6,500. Mari Cooper looks really good at 6,300. He should probably garner more ownership than he's going to get, so I would think that's going to be below 10%. And then obviously off the big week last week, Njoku didn't get priced up nearly enough, so a lot of people are going to chase that, and he's looking like a really good play. So yeah, I mean, with Cooper and Njoku looking like good plays, and Mariota being chalk, I mean, I think Jacoby Brissett doubles are in play this week. And this is coming from a guy who touted Joe Flacco doubles in the flow chart last week, which, as we all know, did not hit. Okay, 2 games left. That means we got a couple more Michelob shots to do. Let's get it popping. Who's still with me in the chat? We still got people here. I love it. Every time I click back over, I'm just happy to see humans watching. Okay. Game number 11 is the the Seattle Seahawks at the Detroit Lions. Detroit is favored by 4 here, and the over/under is 48. So DeAndre Swift, it looks like they're shutting him down until after their Week 6 bye. So we're gonna get 2 uh, Jamal Williams weeks. So he's gonna be a great play. You got to start him in every league you have him. He was already probably a starter consideration in most leagues with how he was doing, and now we get no Swift, so you got to fire up Williams if you got him. And then Amon-Ra St. Brown got a little bit dinged up last week. And so he played 80% of the snaps. Josh Reynolds plays 80%, and DJ Chark played 80%. Reynolds actually led the team in targets with 10. Um, and Amon-Ra was right behind him with 9. I don't think there's much to be concerned about there. Amon-Ra's numbers do look a little bit low this game, but I think we can chalk that up a little bit to his injury, not necessarily his opportunity. He did take 45 air yards and turn those into 73 receiving yards. So a really good conversion right there. We know how shifty he is once he gets the ball in his hands. And then Josh Reynolds, 172 air yards. DJ Chark, 117 air yards. So that's looking pretty good against the Seattle defense, which isn't that great. So the things to keep in mind here when we're seeing this many air yards happen, and not really the greatest conversion rates for either of these guys last week. Um, we want to take a look at how they're trending the weeks before, right? So Reynolds hadn't seen a whole lot of air yards, so you can't really take a whole lot out of this conversion rate. But DJ Chark he'd seen 211 air yards in weeks 1 and 2. Now he added another 117, converting at a 25% rate in weeks 1 and 2, and that jumped up a little bit to 39%, but it just doesn't feel like something that you really want to buy into yet until we see an efficient game out of Chark. He might just be out there, uh, you know, just not really being able to separate, or I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. Maybe Goff's not as accurate downfield. Um, and yeah, the weighted opportunity rating fell off a little bit for Amon-Ra, but I think we're not too worried about that. Just knowing that he missed some time with the injury there mid game, but he was able to pop back out there. T.J. Hawkinson is fine. I think he caught a touchdown this week. Yeah, 3 catches, 18 yards, and a touchdown. Just like with pretty much like every tight end in the league, he's just going to be so touchdown dependent. It's kind of tough to trust. Travis Homer got pretty banged up, I think. I think he's going to be out for a decent amount of time here. So that's good for Rashad Penny and Kenneth Walker, you would think. But Kenneth Walker only played 9 snaps in week 3, which isn't great for people who drafted him. But Rashad Penny drafters are loving it. He was kind of the work horse role that week. And DJ Dallas is now going to start getting in the mix with Homer being out. Lockett and Metcalf. I want to look at these guys because I really want to figure out a way. If we're playing some golf action, I want to see how Lockett and Metcalf are looking. So we know these guys are on the field almost every play. They both got double-digit targets last week. That's that condensed production that we like to see in offenses. So Geno Smith is airing it out, right? They're not just running the ball like they have last year with freaking Russell Wilson, which just doesn't make any sense. They run the ball more with Russell Wilson, then they switch to Geno Smith, and now they pass it more. Not the greatest coach in there, Pete. So looking at the ADOT, Tyler Lockett. Oh, come on. I got no data for this game either. That is brutal. Okay, so damn, that sucks. Tyler Lockett 9.8 ADOT, DK Metcalf 6.2. A lot more air yards for Lockett in weeks 1 and 2. They're both converting them pretty well also. Let's see what else we can infer from here. Uh, Damn, not a whole lot without the air yard data and the ADOT data. I don't know what's going on. I got to figure out why some of these games aren't populating for me. Okay, well, that's a bit of a bummer. I am going to try to figure out some angles on this game. So I wouldn't be surprised if Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, or both of them make their way into the DraftKings flow chart this weekend. So keep your eyes peeled on that one, people. For those who maybe aren't sure of, I saw some questions earlier about with some general DraftKings questions. So I write 2 articles every week. I write and they're called the flow chart. Basically helps you kind of create theoretically lineups that should be live to win some tournaments on DraftKings or double up your money in cash games. And yeah, they're pretty fun. They help you create competitive lineups with leverage, taking into leverage, contrarian, good upside, ceiling upside, stuff like that. So a lot of good stuff there. So be on the lookout for that. I usually post those on Saturday morning. So firing through this Detroit Seattle game on the projections here. Of course, Jamal Williams is going to be the most popular running back, and he's going to be pretty much a lock in cash, I would say. Amon-Ra's looking good at 7,700. He's projecting really well still. And TJ Hawkins projecting really well at 4,100, but he might be the most owned tight end, which I never like playing. So figuring out how to attack this game with Goff and maybe Chark and Reynolds. And finding some action there, I think, is going to be fun. Rashad Penny is projecting well at 4,900. He's going to be a really interesting person to play this week. I played a lot of him last week. He did decent, didn't do anything crazy. Lockett, unfortunately, is coming in really popular. 5,900 this week, and he's projecting really well. So that's a bit of a bummer. I kind of thought this game was going to go a little bit more under the radar, but it doesn't look like that's the case. Geno Smith is projecting well at 5,400, and he's $200 cheaper than Marcus Mariota, and he's coming in at a third of the ownership. So again, if you're playing Marcus Mariota in tournaments, I just don't think that's the right step to take there. Okay, it looks like this game has been kind of a snooze fest since our guy Tua went down. It looks like we got Bengals pissed on the sidelines. I don't know what happened there. Wasn't really watching, but looks like it's T. Higgins show and not much else really. Uh, Mixon's got a couple more yards. Hmm. Okay. So yeah, that wraps up that game. We'll hit another shot here and get on to game number 12. Yeah. The premier matchup of the week, which is actually outpacing in over under by I think a full 3 points on every other game of the weekend. Buffalo Bills at the Baltimore Ravens. Buffalo is favored on the road by 3 points, and the over under is 51. So J.K. Dobbins was back in the lineup. Let's see how that affected things in the backfield here for the Ravens. 44% of the snaps that kind of eased him in there, and he got 7 carries. Justice Hill was the only other guy to get really any action. So Mike Davis and Kenyon Drake are just basically out of the picture now. So yeah, nothing really else that we care about from these guys. We'll keep our eyes on Dobbins. I saw a couple clips of him on Red Zone. Didn't really look super great, but it's to be expected coming off such a long injury absence. So rooting for Dobbins to get back healthy, rooting for him to be the same kind of explosive guy he was a couple years ago, and give Lamar a little bit of support there. Speaking about Lamar, I mean, if we're talking about Lamar, we got to go straight to Mark Andrews, who's just absolutely dominating. 13 targets in week 3, which is insane for a tight end, on the field for 90% of the snaps. Bateman, Duvernay, whatever. Were kind of second fiddle and it was just all the Mark Andrews show in week 3. Let's see if it's sustainable, though. Let's see if what Mark Andrews is doing is sustainable. 224 air yards in weeks 1 and 2, converting those at a 70% rate, which is pretty good at that amount of volume of air yards. And he's demanding a 0.71 weighted opportunity rating. All just phenomenal stuff. Turns that into 152 air yards in week 3. Actually doesn't convert those very well. Only 59% conversion rate. Still catches 8 passes for 89 yards, 2 touchdowns. Wow. Yeah, I don't see this a lot. We don't see a lot a player getting a whopper. Oh, it's just money. You love it. So I would say everything we see here with Andrews is sustainable. Fire him up. I don't see anything in his way right now outside of injury, from being the overall tight end one on the year. Um, let's look at Bateman. So he had a little bit of a down week this week, mostly because just everything was going Andrew's way. But he still did see 88 air yards. He had a big bomb just go off his fingertips. 2 catches for 59 yards. Converting them okay. The Whopper's still good. Yeah, Bateman's fine. Nothing to worry about Bateman. I think the only thing to worry about for Bateman is Duvernay. I think I say his name wrong. Devin Duvernay keeps just being a little bit of a touchdown leech. Scoring 25% of the team's fantasy points in weeks 1 and 2 is Duvernay, and then he grabs another touchdown and 10 more points this week. Just a bummer if you're a Bateman guy. Okay, moving on to Buffalo. So Buffalo is all about I think the big narrative this week was how Devin Singletary did in the first really competitive game that Buffalo's been in. So we've seen Buffalo get into kind of some blowouts here to start the year, and that's when Zach Moss and James Cook were we're mixing in a little bit more. But in a competitive atmosphere, like we expect to see on Sunday against the Ravens, Singletary jumped up to 75% of the snaps, saw 11 targets, which is great. I mean, that's phenomenal. I don't know if that's going to stick, but I mean, that's amazing. And then, oh, did we just get a bomb to Tyreek Hill? Yeah, we did. Tyreek Hill bomb from Teddy Two Gloves. That thing held up in the air forever. Amazing. Knocking on the door here, gonna put Burrow into hurry up mode. Oh no, it's only the third quarter. We got plenty of game time left. So, anyways, back to what we were saying about Singletary. He only had 9 rushes, but that's okay because we know the Bills are just going to pass a lot. But when Singletary is on the field for 74% of snaps, gets 11 targets, that's really good stuff from him. I wouldn't worry too much about the rushing yards. Like I said, it's not too big of a deal. But 9 catches for 78 yards and a touchdown is great. And I think the biggest thing that we can take away from Singletary is the snap share, right? We don't really know if it's going to come through attempts at the goal line. We don't know if it's going to come through targets, through the air, dump offs, stuff like that. But the fact that when the game got close, he was on the field more, I think is really important. And it's something to keep in mind when you're looking at Singletary moving forward on a week to week basis. He might just end up being kind of a better play when the Bills are going to be in a competitive atmosphere because we've seen when the Bills go into blowout mode, they just yank him and then we put in Cook and Moss. So that's my biggest takeaway there on Singletary. Looking at the receivers here, Stephon Diggs, um, Jake Kumaro, Mackenzie Crowder, and Davis. I'll throw Dawson Knox in here too because uh, he's been blocking a lot. See if he's done anything better than blocking. Okay, so Kumaro basically went away now that Gabe Davis came back. Gabe Davis is on the field just pretty much every snap, 96% of the snaps. Diggs saw the main targets here with 11, but it was also the kind of the Isaiah McKenzie show, the first time he's really balled out. And then Dawson Knox, only 7% of targets. That's in line with his 10% from weeks 1 and 2. So Knox is unfortunately looking like a touchdown dependent bro here. Um, Okay, looking at some of the advanced metrics for the receiver side, Diggs just continues to be pretty crazy. 240 air yards through weeks 1 and 2, and then he gets 84 this past week for a 22% share. Um, Gabe Davis, not a ton going on there. Only 3 catches for 37 yards. And then Isaiah McKenzie got 7 for 76 in the touchdown. So McKenzie led the team in fantasy points. Diggs kind of had an unsustainable 45% of the team share going through the first 2 weeks. So I think that was kind of bound to change. Well, we know he had the huge week in week 2, so I guess that was part of it. Just a small sample size there. But yeah, Dawson Knox not looking great. I would have liked to see a little bit more positive things coming out of him, but the numbers just aren't really showing it here. Okay, let's check out this last game here on DraftKings. Again, right off the bat, this one is looking like there's going to be some pretty condensed ownership, which makes me very interested. So Josh Allen is going to be popular. Stephon Diggs is going to be popular. Mark Andrews is going to be popular. Lamar, somewhat. Everybody else is not projecting to be owned at all. So this is obviously not going to happen. People are going to be talking about this game. Every DFS analyst, every show is going to be trying to figure out angles on this game. And by the time Sunday hits, this is going to be spread out. But it's going to be interesting to see which way this goes, right? If people are off of Lamar and they're just going straight to Allen, if Allen is $100 more than Lamar and is going to be 3 times the ownership, man, it's just so easy to play Lamar there, I think. So, anyways, that's kind of the way it's shaken out here. I do think Gabe Davis is a little bit expensive there at 6,600, but I mean, we know what his ceiling is. We know he's got the capability there. I probably prefer Rashad Bateman at 5,600, though. We said his metrics weren't really anything to freak out too much about. And then Dawson Knox is actually looking pretty good at 3,800 just because his price keeps dropping. So, yeah, I wouldn't mind taking some shots on Knox there in DFS, just knowing that he's liable to catch 2 touchdowns really at any game of the week. So there we go. We stuck around. I thank you guys for showing up, for hanging out, for watching. Again, feel free to fire in some questions in the chat if you had them. But we made it to the end. We made it through all 12 games. We did it in an hour and a half, which is a 30-minute improvement than last week. And hey, maybe next week we'll get a little quicker. And we got two Michelobs down. Power hour. I like it. I like bringing the name to Power Hour, right? We can't call ourselves Power Hour and not take a shot of beer between every game, right? That's just not how it works. So, I think there's a lot of ball game left. I don't know if I'm really gonna hang out for the whole thing here. I wish we were able to do this on playback. I wish they could kind of get their sponsorship going with Amazon Prime. It's a lot more fun to watch this thing together. But yeah, let's take another cruise through the Thursday night football challenge here. So Burrow's over the 100. I think with that throw he's going to be over 180 yards. Which Teddy Bridgewater is actually knocking on his door, but I don't think Bridgewater has a moment, right? Let's just double check that. Who knows if he did something weird last year that all day thought was cool. Yeah, no moment for Teddy. Um, so so it's gonna be Burrow. You're gonna need a Burrow. It does pretty much look like you're gonna need a Mixon too. P Ryan did get one carry though. It looks like he got one rushing attempt, so all the P Ryan rares get there. And then T. Higgins. Sorry, it's Tyreek Hill now. Tyreek Hill is leading in yards, 126 to T. Higgins with 102. And those look like the two guys that are gonna be fighting for it there. Waddle, Chase, Hurst, those guys are all in the 30s. And then I think what everybody else is waiting out for is to figure out if Tyler Boyd's going to catch a pass, and it looks like he just did. He just popped up for a pass. So I think yeah, there we go. Oh, is that a pass? Maybe I might be behind. I just saw Boyd get a throw. Looks like it was like a behind the line of scrimmage pass, and then Boyd. Oh no, so Boyd had a catch before that. Okay, so there we go. So Boyd and P Ryan are live. Let's take a little cruise while we're here. We might as well just take a little cruise through the challenge builder we got over at Momentum Labs. For those of you who are not in Momentum Labs, I'd recommend you coming over and subscribing. We've got a ton of tools for NFL all day that we're building over there, and one of them is our challenge tracker, which we've got set up for Thursday Night Football. So playbook in week 4 is really complicated because of the pregame pick. So what I've done here is I've broken out like what's the most efficient way to get to 100 yards based on how many pregame picks you get right. And it's a lot of information here. There's a lot of stuff. We're not going to go through it all here. But I think the most important thing to realize is the pregame picks really affect how many challenges you have to do. So if you get both of your pregame picks right, then you only have to do 3 challenges to get to 100 yards. And so that means that you're targeting, based on the EV right now of the packs, you're targeting a challenge premium of about $80 per challenge. Whereas if you get 0 pregame picks right, you got to do 4 challenges to get to 100 yards. And then you want all of your premiums to be $59. So a whole $20 per challenge you're losing there just by not getting pregame picks correct. But anyways, here's what we chalked up for pregame. We preloaded all the rares into it. And so you can see at the time, P Ryan's run up when I last loaded this, he had ran up to 86. I think he's going to fall down to about 55 after the game. Boyd was up to 97. I think he's going to fall back to about 75. And all the rest of these guys haven't run a ton. Maybe going to drop down another $15 or so after the game. And I don't really think too many people are going to use the QB rares, especially now that Burrow's in there and he's got a ton of moments. So wouldn't be too worried about Burrow. Uh, Tyreek Hill is interesting because he does not have a ton of moments. So let's look over in our primetime games tab. So this is where you can go to see kind of prep yourself prior to the games starting. So you can see Burrow's got 14,000 moments. He's not going to run anywhere. Tyreek Hill versus T. Higgins is the battle right now, and both of these guys have a pretty low amount of moments, right, relative to the rest of the receivers. So for whoever wins that should get a little bit of a bump. And then the biggest one is the Bengals versus the Dolphins here. And so this is going to be just like we saw on Monday night. This is going to be the moment that runs the most because of the low circulation. 4,600 for the Bengals, 3,900 for the Dolphins. So yeah, if in the chat, if people have the live pricing on this, let me know. Otherwise, I can do a little searching here. So let's get it. Let's fire in a couple different searches here. So we'll look at where P Ryan's at. We'll look at what Boyd's at. Um, and I realize I should probably share my screen here. And then we'll look at what Bengals. Oh, you can't do it. Okay, it's a bummer. So P runs down to 62 and Boyd's at 82. I wonder why that is. Not sure. Maybe it's because I don't know. I guess it's because they didn't hit as the bottleneck. So that's what people were thinking they might be the bottleneck. And then we'll look at Dolphins. I really wish it was easier to search for teams on here. I think you got to go down to play type, team, melt. And then, no, that didn't work. See, I don't get it. I don't get it why it doesn't work like that. So what do you even do? Oh, you do team on here? Come on, people. Hmm. Okay. Well, then we're just gonna have to filter. And we're just gonna have to look for these damn things. So Dolphins are at 38. Bengals are at 60. Okay. I think uh I think one of these has room to run here. Um, and I think whichever one wins out is gonna be worth, you know, worth $60 there. It's 60 right now for the Bengals, so I think whichever one wins out is going to be worth probably close to $100. I think I don't know, over 80, I would say, off the top of the head. Okay, cool. We're gonna wrap it. Thanks to everybody for joining and getting into the weeds with me on the shows here. I hope you're getting some helpful information out here. I hope maybe this is helping you figure out how exactly to use the workload report, how to apply that to your fantasy football needs every week. But cheers, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. See you next week.